Hello, legends. Today, I catch up with Cub member Navid Haddadan Guia, founder and CEO of property company CDA CoLiving, an organisation that subleases over 1,200 rooms across Sydney and employs 50 people across the country. Navid started the company around 8 years ago with his now wife and has experienced huge amounts of growth in that time, as well as had to survive some of the toughest economies. The business model was really unique. It was actually the first time I've met someone with that business model and within that industry. And he was just a really incredible guy. So I think you're gonna love the show. It was the first time I've met him, so I think you're gonna love the show. Hey Navid, it's nice to meet you.
Oh, pleasure. Nice to meet you too.
Now, I was just doing a bit of reading about your business, but it sounds awesome. So, you guys rent over 1,000 rooms. Is it residential rooms? Is it short-term rental, long-term rental? What does the business do?
Yeah, look, predominantly we do rental arbitrage, rent for rent. We just found it was a better way to kind of leverage the market instead of trying to buy all the underlying assets, which obviously is quite expensive. We found a way where we could kind of do what we do to try and uplift the rent in a different area. And just try and maximize it over time. So,
wait, what does that mean? So, you'll rent a room in a place, and then you will then re-rent it yourself.
Yeah, so we could focus on predominantly. I do residential. I have got commercial under my banner as well. However, I tend to find you do what you're good at, right? Like 90% of what you do is what you're good at, and then we always experiment a little bit, try different stuff. So I tend to do medium to long-term rentals. So I'll focus more on think boarding house style. But we do also have some short-term Airbnb style sort of properties as well. But like I said, that's more of an experimental side. My main focus is more long-term rentals.
Okay. And just to clarify, so you'll go to an apartment or an apartment building, rent a unit, and then you'll re-rent it to someone at a higher price.
Yeah. So what I'll focus more is, personally, I actually prefer the whole building. I'd rather not go into, it's individual apartments. So yeah, I guess the way we've discovered is the rental market is not homogenous. So a lot of people look at the rental market and they think, okay, I've got a property in, I don't know, Potts Point, the apartment's $400 a week. Just to give an example. But that could be rented long-term, medium-term, short-term, corporate. It could be done for tradespeople. It could be done for different demographics. So, a student would pay a different price from a professional. A person from, say, India would pay a different price from Philippines or China. So once you start understanding the demographics of an area and exactly what you can do, you could rent that same unit for $400, $500, $600, $700 a week. And if you do it on short term, you might even be able to leverage it and bring out, $1,200 a week out of it. So then obviously there's additional costs on it. So we take a clip from the top. It's pretty simple.
Yeah, it is simple. I mean, so you currently have over 1,200 units that you've rented and then rented again.
Yep.
And your business makes the difference between the two. So you might find a unit that someone will accept $400 a week for, and you're like, well, wait a second, we could definitely rent this for $700 a week. Rent it for $700 a week, and then bang, you get $300 a week coming through every week from that unit.
Yeah, correct. But I guess the way we have to approach it is to understand you're there to serve a market. So why is it that people won't go and just rent that apartment for $400? The thing is, people have different needs. They might not want to actually take on the liability of paying a large bond. They might not want to be taking on a long-term lease. They don't want to have the hassle of having to go grab furniture, put it there, and then when they move out, grab it and move it with them. So you tend to find people are willing to pay that premium for less effort. And I think it's a symptom of our generation, right? People go to co-working because they don't want to have an office space. They might do Uber car share because they don't want to buy the car. So I just find that, fragmenting things down to more digestible sizes for people, and especially with the more, how do I say it? People are getting more used to doing the cash flow thing, right? They're paying for individual, even a game. You can't buy a game anymore. You pay to play, right?
Subscribing, yeah.
Subscription, that's the word I'm looking for. Subscription model. So it seems to be more like that. So yeah, we're obviously there to fill a market need, and we found one and it works for us.
And so do they commit long term? So I've just never heard it. We have never met, so I'm really interested in the business. But so you mentioned, do you furnish it as well? So they'll come and rent it off you furnished?
Yep. So again, different markets. I've met many people in my space. It's funny when I hear that people haven't heard of it. I stumbled on it many years ago. So I'll digress. I'll give you a bit of story. I stumbled on it many, many years ago, about 7 years ago. And over time, I started kind of, playing around with it. I did a couple of houses. I met people with a couple of houses. And then it got to a point where I met this guy and, big influence on me. At the time, he had about 400 rooms and I had about 80. And 400 rooms at that time, this is pre-COVID, was actually quite a substantial size. There was a lot of people that would never get to that size. Now, post-COVID, a whole nother story. There's a lot of people with 1,000 plus, but sorry, I say a lot, maybe half a dozen, but 400 for me was like, wow, this could go a lot further. Like he's doing pretty well out of it. He's buying property and whatnot. Fortunately, became friends. He invited me to Bangkok with him. I went out clubbing in Bangkok and with a group of 5 of us. And of those 5, about 3, I think, continued on and grew their businesses. And that was a sort of inspiration where I was like, I kind of knew it could grow bigger than what it was. You see the numbers on a page and you're like, well, I could do this 100 times, but then to actually meet people that kind of break that barrier of like what's potential and what could happen when you move forward. Yeah,
it's kind of like the importance of surrounding yourself with the right people.
Correct. Look, I can definitely cover a whole podcast just on that one topic of, who you surround yourself with. And that's been a big thing for me. It's actually one of the reasons I joined Cub.
How long have you been a member for?
I've only been a member like 7 months.
Oh, you're brand new.
Yeah.
Well, it makes sense that we haven't met.
Well, Jonathan Tyson invited me along and I'd actually heard about it beforehand. Basically, I was at a point where all my friends after COVID had gone bust or they were all working 9-to-5 jobs and, they were trying to rest after work. On the weekends, they had to see family. So I was like, you know what? I'm a bit lonely here. I've got friends, but I never get to see them. I never get to spend time with them. So I need to find a new group of people to kind of hang out with, people I can relate to, I go to a wedding of somebody from high school or whatever, and they're like, oh man, Sydney market's so tough. You can't buy. And I'm just like, dude, like you can buy everything, It's a different headspace. And I think being surrounded by people that have that sort of mindset really makes an impact on how you view the world and the possibilities ahead of you.
Yeah, well, I obviously agree. But yeah. And so you mentioned you met this guy that had a similar business to yours, Correct. But it was much bigger than yours at the time.
Yeah.
At that time, you had 80 rooms. How did you actually start the business? Like, how did you realize that this could be a business, and like, what made you get going? Was it your first business?
No. So this is funny. Like, it's funny how you look in the past and you retrospectively like recreate your history, right? I have tried many businesses. I never thought of it that way. I just did stuff. I was a civil engineer before. I used to work. The last project I did was like the West Connects New M5. And I loved it. Like, I really enjoyed it. It's something I liked and I always thrived. I wasn't the sort of guy that ever hated what I did or whatnot. But every 2 years I'd quit and I'd just do something random for 6-12 months. Like, I'd quit my job. I'd go work in retail, stocking shelves. I'd go back to engineering for 2 years and I'd quit my job. And then I'd go, work at Subway or, like whatever. I didn't care. Like, I just wanted to do random stuff. So my sister had a child and I got made redundant from an engineering job. They asked me to move to Adelaide. I was like, look, I don't really want to go there right now. Not for that money anyways. And they're like, okay, see you later. And I was like, this is a great opportunity. My sister just had a kid, moved up there. So I tried many businesses from that time. Like, I was kind of unemployed at the time. I was like, let me try a friend of mine was like, hey, let's start a painting business. Did that. And then he's like, let's do renovations. And then I realized, like, this is one of the lessons for me is like, I'd start these businesses and something wouldn't work, right? Like, maybe there was a piece of the puzzle missing. And part of that was kind of like, let's say, okay, I was living in mid-north coast, so around, oh God, I love how I'm forgetting all these suburb names now. Anyways, near Bulladila, whatever, Foster, the Holiday Central. So I was around there and I realized, like, I was building granny flats in Sydney in my spare time. I was buying real estate and building granny flats. And then I was like, you know what? There's no one doing this in the mid-north coast. I think there's a huge opportunity for people to start doing that here. So I guess
building granny flats.
Like, at the time, it was like the latest craze in Sydney. You didn't have to pay all these council rates and everything that was popping up. And I was like, okay, let me go talk to the real estate agent I'm renting from. I'll tell them about this great idea. Go email everybody on their list and be like, we can double your income on your property. So, like, I could always see these opportunities. I never thought of it as me doing business. It's just like, hey, I've got time and this makes sense. Let me do that.
I was doing stuff that made sense.
Yeah. Then I lined up a few properties to build. And then my mate, who was meant to be the builder, he's like the guy that knew what's up. He's like, I don't feel like doing it. I don't feel comfortable. And then the whole thing fizzled apart. So I guess one of the biggest lessons for me is like, you got to build things like a puzzle where if something doesn't fit or doesn't work, change it out for something else, because that would have been a great opportunity at the time. And that's happened many times. You know, I did a construction renovation business with a friend. We were making a killing with painting, but then he's like, I want to be a builder. I want to renovate. Everyone wanted to be a builder when I grew up. So we started renovating all these properties, and then I was like, dude, like that mirror's a bit like crooked, you know, and maybe we should fix that. And then he's like, no, don't worry about it. And then I'm like, that floor doesn't look right. And then I realized, same thing, piece of the puzzle. I was doing business with the wrong person. So I think it's as you advance, and something we were mentioning previously, sorry, just a bit off topic, is it's about iterations. The more you try things and the more you do things, you start finding what works and what clicks together to really move you forward. And that's what gives you momentum.
So how did you find the apartment rental?
So
The concept anyway.
Yeah, it was mentioned a couple of times to me through my life. I was very heavily involved in real estate. I hadn't bought that much. I had a few properties in Sydney when I was around 23 to 25 years old. And then I met a few people doing those property courses. And one of them called me up and she was like, hey, you know, like I heard of this thing where you're subleasing houses. I'm like, you know what? It's so random. Somebody mentioned that to me like 12 months ago. I'm a bit frustrated with my job. Sorry, I was in a job. Always loved my work. This one time I had this job I didn't enjoy that much. And I was like, let's do it on the side. Within 2 weeks, like I love her. She was such a hustler. Karina, shout out to you. She was such a hustler. Within 2 weeks, we had properties lined up and we were furnishing the rooms, setting it up. And we had no idea what we were doing, man. Like we had no control. We didn't understand the ins and outs of it. I remember like 3 months in, we were like sitting outside the car at midnight because they kept throwing parties every night, you know, a whole bunch of Irish guys, like, you know, 3-day DJ sessions out with, you know, the DJ set and everything. And I was like, man, this is not the way to do this. There has to be another way. So again, looking back at that, things change. You get better at stuff. You find all the issues that don't work and you got to.
What do you mean? So the people you were subleasing to, that you were renting to, ended up just they were Irish backpackers and they were just partying nonstop in the unit?
Yeah. So basically, I just learned not to rent to a specific
Irish
demographic. maybe find some other people. Yeah.
But they just need somewhere to live.
Exactly. And look, for me, it's just you learn over time. You learn what works and what doesn't work. And I know companies who only cater for Irish backpackers, right? So there's definitely ways to make things work, but you got to find what works for you as well.
And so when you work it out, so like let's say I find a unit, you work out that you might make $200 a week from that unit. Yep. I don't know if there's a realistic margin or whatever. I'm just throwing out a number.
Yeah.
So you could make $200 a week from this unit. You've locked that person in for a year, or how long would you normally lock them in for?
Look, we do 3, 6, 12 months. Obviously, we found a few ways to kind of encourage people to do longer term leases. It reduces, increases retention and reduces, turnover, and therefore you don't need as many staff.
So how do you work out how much you can spend on furniture for that unit? Because furnishing is expensive.
Well, it's funny. I think it was cheaper when you start off, right? You go through these first you can find stuff on Gumtree, and then like you get to a size where you're like, look, I can't drive around in a van all day. I know the tiny guys are getting stuff off the side of the road, trying to keep costs down. In a month we might set up 100 rooms. I'm not going to go send teams of people in vans trying to find furniture. So you get to a point where you start, you go to IKEA, then you go to Salvation Army was great at a certain size. Now we have suppliers and distributors, so people bring containers of furniture for us. And so we just make a phone call and a whole bunch of people go out and just set up properties.
Yeah, it's kind of interesting that, because like people always say, corporates are so inefficient. They spend so much on everything. But really, no, it's just that as you get bigger as a business, it's not so much just about the cost. It's about the efficiency and the predictability of the outcome.
Yeah.
Yes, I could try to scoundrel for free furniture around the place, but realistically, I can't scale my business looking for free furniture. I'm going to need a system that delivers furniture when I need it.
Correct. And that's been the biggest finding for me. So you can talk about revenue, but what I find is there's a sort of like something happens at 100 rooms, 400 rooms, 1,000 rooms, 2,000 rooms, right? And I find that people get stuck there. And it's an obstacle they have to learn to overcome. So for up to 100 rooms, which you can do it yourself, it's just your ability to put yourself out there and try and find stuff, try and find deals, try and find people, furnish it, do the work, like get in there and do the work. From 100 to 400 rooms, that's when you got to like, hey, I have to employ someone. And I have so many friends stuck at 100 rooms because they just don't, they either can't figure out how to hire people. They don't want to deal with the plane. They just see it as like an obstacle they don't want to deal with. They're like, it's too much work. So they're stuck at 100. And the thing is, it actually is so much more work to go from 100 to 400. I always advise people getting into it, like stop at 100, enjoy your life. You know, this friend of mine, she goes on.
Can they make good money at 100?
Yeah, look, if you're doing it right, I don't know, should I be sharing? So
you don't have to say how much they make, but I mean, you can.
Yeah, a couple $100,000 at least.
That's good money.
Yeah, that's profit.
And
yeah.
you work for yourself.
Yeah, correct. And look, that's a good place to start. But then from there, like there's a lot of pain to get to 400. That's sort of like, you really got to learn how to hire people, deal with stuff. And then at 400, you know, you can then take a bit of a break. And I always thought once you get there, your costs will go down. They don't. Your overheads keep going up. It's crazy. So then from 400, I don't know, I just went past that and then we started pushing for 1,000. And that's when you realize, oh, I have to have people that manage people. So I guess what I realized is I'm personally no longer in the game of renting houses and renting rooms. I'm in the business of like understanding how to find talent, how to manage stuff, how to create processes and systems so that I can pass on my ideas to the person doing the work on the ground. So, you know, business shifts and changes over time. And obviously as we've grown, there's been new opportunities for me to grow in that.
Yeah. I mean, business is really a company's ability to replicate value that it's providing to specific person or people.
Correct, yeah.
So in order to scale, it's about operations. Yeah. And that's where like small businesses always struggle the most. Like big businesses, they've got systems, procedures and operations that basically mean you could switch people in and out and they'd know what to do. You know, like tick this box, tick that box, go down. You know, it's basically like a checklist. So they're less reliant on any one staff member per se, because you could just move that person out, move someone in and just follow this and that works. I mean, I don't love that as a working environment, but it's safer as a business because, you know, you're not reliant on anyone. You're reliant on your systems and operations. But you do, as you scale, you do need to get better systems and operations so that the business isn't relying on you as the owner. Because at one point, like you said, up to 100, like it would have been, I guess, relying on you. Yeah. But when it gets to 200, 400, 1,200, whatever you're at now, obviously it's not relying on you to do everything, which means you've had to create systems and ops and teach people how to use them and follow them in order to get there in the first place.
Yeah, well, it's actually gone a bit opposite. Like we're getting to a point where people are teaching me. Like, so there was a point in time, as in every business, as you grow, where you're the best at everything, right? And I think for some people, that's like an ego thing where they're trying to hold on to that, or they just like, oh, someone can't do it better than me, so I'll just do it myself. But if you don't give that opportunity, number one, maybe you're good at doing the job, but you suck at hiring. So if you don't keep trying that, like I've probably hired 100, 200 people and had to let them go because I just didn't know. Number one, maybe I didn't know what to look for, or I didn't understand what qualities I was after for specific roles. And as that's fleshed out, now I hire people that they come and go, hey, why don't you do this way or do that way? Like I rely on them to bring me ideas. And because they're only focused on a specific role or a specific, you know, task, they're amazing at it. So like, I'll give you an example. Like I was just looking at statistics this morning. So I look at dashboards and stuff that really helps us like understand the business and where it's at. You know, the last 2 hires were bringing in 50 leads a week. And yet the guys I hired 6 months ago, each one was doing 30. So now my benchmark's 50, not 30.
So what's a new lead to you though? Like a potential apartment to lease and sublease, or a tenant to enter a unit that you already have?
I was talking specifically about tenants. I do have another division that looks for identifying and finding properties. So, you know, we found a way to systemize that, which a lot of people, I actually don't know anyone else who has the way we have. And that's one of our, I guess, secret sources where we're able to find a large amount of properties and onboard them.
I love how you've got this little, like you've referenced it a few times. So you got like this friendship group who all run the similar style businesses to yourself. Well, what's it called? What is that business?
There is no friendship group, man. Look, it's actually really weird for me. They're just people I hang out with, right? Everyone's pretty social and friendly in my space, but somebody pointed this out to me like 2 days ago, and I actually want to share it because I want to acknowledge it. Like, so yesterday I got a message from a random number, and the person's like, hey, I've got this boarding house. I heard you're the guy to take it. Can we have a chat so I can offer it to you? And I was like, who offered it to me? And he sent me the name. It's one of my competitors, another guy with 1,000. He's like, look, it's out of my area, but call Navid. He's great at it, you know, in this particular part of town. And then about 3 months ago, when things were going tough, I called, you know, I was getting really frustrated. Like we were losing, oh man, we were like hemorrhaging like 10 grand a week. Like a whole bunch of stuff wasn't working out, which we fixed everything now. But I was like, I don't know what to do. So I was like, where do I go from here? I literally was like, oh, you know what? I'm just going to call someone I know who knows how to do this. So I called my largest competitor. And he was like, hey, man, long time. How are you? I'm like, hey, look, I'm really struggling. I'd love your advice. He invited me to his office. I took 3 people with me. And he literally spent 3 hours showing me how I could improve my business to turn things around. So for me, like, I've just been so grateful to be surrounded by people that I can have really open conversations with. And, you know, maybe I can't add value to them at the time, and I'd love to, you know, eventually. But, you know, at the same time, there's people that come to me and ask for advice. And I'm like, oh, look, you could do this. You could do this, you could do that. As long as people are doing it with good intentions, and like I think we're all trying to grow and provide a better service for the community, there's always an opportunity for us to share ideas. Like even last week, I went to an inspection and met all these people that do what I do, like people that I've never met before. And then 3 days later, I organized for all of us to jump into a car. And then we all drove around to each other's properties and we're like, what do we do different and where could we improve our service to increase our yield? So again, for me, it's scale. If I can increase my yield by $10 a room, over 1,000 rooms, that's an extra $500,000 profit. Like,
it's really cool. Like, I mean, it's rare that you'd find an industry that's close knit and everyone helping each other. You know, which sounds like that's what you guys are doing. I read this book. Yeah. I can't remember. I was trying to remember. What's that company in the US? It's like a Woolworths. It's like a food company, but it's like the healthy organic. What's it called, Laura? Do you know? Can you look it up? Type conscious capitalism book in Google. Anyway, the owner of that company, she'll say in a sec, he like wrote a book. He wrote a book, and one of the things he talks about is conscious capitalism, which is viewing business less so as like war, and less so as like I need to kill you so that I can win, and more so as like, well, there's enough of a market for all of us to survive and to thrive and to do well. So let's help each other do well in the market.
John Mackey from
Whole Foods.
Obviously
yeah.
Whole Foods.
Whole Foods.
Yeah, look, I think, I don't know if it came about because of COVID or because I've always, I guess, been like that. I just like to talk to people and share my ideas and what's on my mind. For me, look, I earn enough for me to enjoy my life quite well. I don't understand why I'd need to chop out competition. As long as everyone's been respectful and we're all sort of trying to, you know, provide a better service, then we can all learn from each other.
Yeah, no, I think more industries should be like that. 100%. Yeah. I agree. I even tell Cub members all the time. Like sometimes people say, oh, you know, I don't want to meet someone in my industry, or I've joined Cub because I want to meet, you know, people outside of my industry to learn more because, you know, I'm already part of an industry group. Obviously that's great too. You know, diversifying who you're meeting is very important because you're going to learn more actually. Yeah. But I always think like, you know, you shouldn't view people that are in the same business as you as competitors. You should actually, they're probably the most important ones to be friends with, you know, because like you said, you relate most to each other more so than any other business because you're most alike. But B, if you both grow and do well and you know, things happen, you don't know. They might buy you one day, might be the other way around. You might merge, you might become huge partners. You might enter different niches and then merge together to control the market. Like you'd rather be friends than enemies.
Well, yeah, look, I actually have a business partner. His name's James. And he was the same thing. He reached out one day and I was like, hey, what do people think of this deal? And I was like, oh, I've actually seen that property. Like, I don't think it'll work out because of this or that reason. And then he kept calling me. I don't remember this, but he said he called me like 100 hours in a year or something. Like he just kept calling me and asking me questions to a point where he was growing so fast and he was like leveraging my staff to kind of like manage it. And I was like, hey, dude, you can't grow this far. I can't keep up. I didn't have time for my own stuff. And then we're like, let's do business together. And as soon as we went together, like I freed him up to just focus on growing. And then I focused on the business. Like we picked up 600 rooms in like 12 months.
And you know, when you pick up a room, when you say room, you don't say unit or apartment. Is it because you'll rent an apartment that might have 2 rooms and you're renting each of them individually?
Correct, yeah. Okay. So I just try, it's just an easy way to, some say bed, some say room, some say doors.
Yeah, well, you're renting per room, so it makes more sense.
Yeah.
And what areas do you focus on mostly?
Yep, so I'm all across Sydney. I've got everything from sort of, you know, the typical areas like Surrey Hills and Bondi, Potts Point, funnily enough, all the way out to like,
Yeah, Potts Point, there's a lot of backpacking.
Correct. I actually don't have too much here, but I do have a lot of like everything out west. I got Fairfield, I got Freshwater, I've got stuff all the way out Campsie and like, Rockdale, like everywhere, all over Sydney. I'm not really tied to a location. Like background or where do I live?
Well, where do you live? But what's your background? What's your background too?
Well, I'm a mix. My dad's from Iran. And my mum's from Peru.
Man, we're having so many Iranians. Or did you say Persians? I don't know.
Yeah,
We're
Persian.
having so many Persians here lately. Have you noticed that?
Really?
Yeah, like two ago was Persian, and then I met another Persian guy. We've got a lot of Persians that come.
Oh, there you go.
What was the other? What was the other side?
Peru.
Really?
Yeah.
Oh, beautiful. My mum's from Mexico. Oh, yeah, my mum was born in Mexico.
Oh, wow.
And my dad Lebanon, so I'm mixed as well.
Nice.
But and where'd you grow up?
I grew up in a lot of places. I grew up in Blacktown, then moved to Cherrybrook. I'm with my wife now. We've been married 3 years. I hope I got that right. 3 years, and we're living in Tarrant Point at the moment. Yeah.
Oh, Tarrant Point's beautiful.
Yeah, it's a nice.
And so, what made you think like? Were you always business minded, or was your family? Were your family have their own businesses?
I heard my dad had a business when I was like 1 year old, but I grew up. They came as immigrants to Australia when I was 3. He worked as a contractor. He always for me, he was always away. He had the craziest work ethic. Like if there's any takeaway from my parents, it's work ethic, man. Like. My dad
Immigrants always have high work ethic.
Just wild. So yeah, look, my dad worked. He was in IT, but then he would do like taxi and stuff on the side. I saw him maybe like 1 day a week. My mum as well, like she took care of us at home, and then eventually she started working herself. And like they both, even to this day, they grind. Like my dad, one of my houses that I own, not a rental property. Unfortunately, I had a tenant that went a bit nuts after 9 years of living there, and we had to like do a full reno, like overhaul of the property, and. Yeah, my dad's like calling me 5 times a week going, hey, you gotta renovate. You gotta renovate. I'm like, Dad, just leave it. Don't care. It's not in my peripheral. Just leave it empty. Don't worry about it. To a point where he just called me and I'm like, you know what? Just do what you want. Just go renovate it. And dude, he did the best job. He was working there. I'd send staff. They'd call me crying, going, I don't want to work with him. He doesn't stop. He doesn't drink water. He won't like have a rest. And then I find out my mum's there, like after she finishes work, she does childcare. She goes and then she's like helping clean. And I'm like, what are you doing, guys? Go home, It doesn't matter what time. So I definitely learned work ethic from them, but no, they weren't involved in business. And they really didn't understand investments. Like I remember when I went to buy my first investment property, like around 22 or 23, I can't remember, they were really upset with me buying out west, even though I saw that, I was like, the numbers stack up, it makes sense, there's huge growth potential. Like I remember that made our relationship really rocky at the start.
How funny. Well, I mean, work ethic is the most important thing. Like so many times, like migrants have to work harder in the new country. Like everything's harder for them. So they end up building a huge work ethic. And also lots of super successful businesses. Like migrant communities are very high as a percentage of business owners as others. And a lot of it's to do with the fact that when you migrate to a country, you're less likely to get a job at the big paying companies. Like, you might have a different name or they don't know the name or the cultures, like you didn't go to the right school, you didn't have the network. So a lot of the times, and I can't remember which books I've read about this, but there's like a lot of data on it. Because they're not getting hired, or it's harder for them to get hired, they end up just starting businesses and it's easier. And then they end up employing other people in their community and things like that. And they just build really great, successful businesses.
Yeah, I was actually commenting, I just looked at the Cub Awards list and there's actually names I recognize from when I was younger.
No way.
Yeah, it's really people I haven't seen in 10, 20 years. Someone I was friends with at university. I was like, oh, I've got to reach out to that person and congratulate him,
No way.
Yeah,
and the Cub Awards is going to be so cool.
Yeah, you're excited about it?
Yeah, very excited. But we've never hosted anything this big. Like, It's a big deal. Man, normally, if you do awards this size, like you've got a team of 20 people, executing it and doing everything. Like we we just had a team of 1 and maybe Laura as well. I'll give it, but like Kirsten, do you know Kirsten from?
I do, yeah.
You may not know her that well because she doesn't necessarily do the events for the clubs anymore. She's actually now she's the GM of BOA, the networking app that we've got. But she said to me at the start of the year, she was like, because I've wanted to do it for ages, the Cub Awards. I announced that we're going to host the Cub Awards in 2015. So it's taken us 9 years to actually do it. But it's because like I knew I wanted to do it, but sometimes you're not capable of doing something. And then it's only when you get a team member join your team who is actually capable of doing that and they say, hey, I can do that. Like then you're like, oh my God, that's awesome. Can we? They're like, yeah. And that's what happened. Kirsten was like, Daniel, this year, like I want to host the Cub Awards. My plan was to host it next year as our 10th birthday, like as a big 10th birthday. And so I initially said no to this year. But she was like, but it'd be good to practice before the 10th birthday so we could have, and I actually agreed with her. So she said, we'll just have a small one, but it's 500 members.
Wow.
In a room at the Sofitel Wentworth Hotel. It's full glam, like we're making it heaps premium.
Pretty excited.
Yeah.
Man.
Yeah, it's good. Do you know what I love about it? We've got a member named Steve Lowe, who owns President Productions. It's the largest business awards company in the country. They're hosting awards every week all over the place.
Wow.
And he's actually mentored us on how to host this award. So he's given us a lot of his IP, and he's incredible. A good friend of mine, been a Cub member a long time. And we sponsored their awards. And I went there and I just saw how excited people get when they win the awards and like how much it means to them. And then, some of them cry and I just thought, you know what? Business owners aren't celebrated enough. Like, look how happy everyone is here at his awards. His is called the Small Business Champion Awards. And they were just so happy. And I was like, you know what? Cub exists because we love business, we want to serve business. I was like, what better way could you serve someone by celebrating them? And also as business owners, like I never feel really content or proud or happy. I'm always just, I always feel, if anything, I always feel, no matter where I get, I always feel like I'm still far from where I want to be. And so I was like, this could be a great way for our community to kind of be forced to stop every year and to like reflect on how far we've come, what we've achieved, how much you've contributed to your community, your family, society as a whole because of what you do in your business. And whether or not they apply to enter the awards or not, but even if they're just attending, they're there celebrating business and its contribution to society. Yeah. And so I'm super excited about that. Bit nervous about actually executing the thing, but look, to be honest, I don't have that much to do. I have to get there. I say the opening speech, and I'm going to say the closing speech. We're giving out like a surprise award at the end, which I'm giving out. But outside of that, the team's got everything covered.
It's interesting you mentioned that, and congratulations. I've seen the growth of Cub. Like I've only been a member for a short time, but everyone I've talked to has been like, we've gotten such amazing value out of it. And for me personally, same thing. Like I'll walk into a room and be like, look, I need this thing. I don't know what you call it. Like I got to do this thing with my business. And someone's like, oh, you're looking for like an org change. But I'm like,
you got to speak to this guy.
You got to talk to that guy. Like they'll give me like 5 recommendations in a minute. So it's been fantastic. I've got a lot of value out of it. And for me also like the social events and things like that and just meeting people that I can kind of throw things at and see what sticks. But it's interesting you mentioned team because I wouldn't be here, and it's something I did want to bring up. I wouldn't be here without superstars that work for my business. And I say my business, it's really our business. Sorry, my wife also involved. She helped me start it off. I was terrible when I started, by the way. I'll just have to point it out. She helped me cross that first barrier of the 100 rooms.
Were you guys together when you started it, or did she work there and then?
We had just met. I was working with my business partner at the time, the Karina, and we both had great big vision and were terrible at day-to-day execution. And I went on holiday as my wife, we just started dating like really early on, a couple of weeks. She saw what I did and she's like, I could do that. I could do it better. So I came back. She'd actually set up 2 properties herself. And then, long story short, we ended up merging, me and her, and started growing the business together.
That's so funny. Yeah. That's like happened to me.
Yeah.
Because I married, Alice worked at Cup. She joined in probably like 2018, maybe the team, 2018, 2019, I think 2018. And by that point, we were lacking operationally. Because right now, we got our COO or head of operations nationally, Holly's her name. She wasn't there at the time. And so Alice was the first person that actually made a lot of the things that I said I wanted to do, like core and a lot of the services. She made them a reality because none of us on the team, including myself, were capable of actually executing. She was so good at it. I was like, I better marry her so she doesn't go anywhere. She's stuck with me in the business now.
Oh, dude, Christelle and I, my wife Christelle, we went through some tough times. By the way, congratulations. Just found out you're having a kid soon.
Yeah, in the next 2 to 4 weeks.
Wow, very soon.
What about you?
My wife is also pregnant. We're expecting in February.
Oh, beautiful.
Yeah, so really excited about that. I haven't thought too much about it. I'm the one that's pregnant. So, but definitely, I'll come home and I'm like, hey, I'm about to have a child. I'm going to be a dad.
Yeah, I'm excited about it.
Yeah, it's me too.
I don't know
it's my first.
Yeah, it's my first.
Yeah, me too.
How old are you?
I'm 38.
Oh, beautiful.
How old are you?
32.
I'm going to be picking your brain, man. I'm going to be like, what do you know 2 months, 3 months ahead of me? What do I need to
Absolutely
know?
nothing. Absolutely nothing. It can't. I thought about that. I was like, how hard can it be? And look, I'm sure it's hard because no one has ever said to me it's easy.
Yeah.
But I was like, everyone else is doing it. So yeah, can't be that hard. If they can do it, I can sure. I certainly can raise someone.
I think the same way. Look, I'll go back to the team thing. I think what helped a lot is I found the right people, and something that was really important and something that I'd love to share, because I was thinking about like, what would I talk about when I go on this podcast? I was like, being really clear with your expectations from staff. So I've got a number of superstars, Andrea, Ariadna, Meg Corian, people that I found them. We've got about 50.
A big team.
Yeah. Look, we don't need it to be that big. We overhired to deal with a few things that came up a few months ago, and now we're in a position where we can consolidate.
Well, don't say that on here. You're
No. We've already had the conversation. So, but yeah, we've got onshore and offshore. So we've kind of built a team overseas, and we've really learned to nurture that. But the advantage here is like, and this is crazy. Like I started with Andrea. She came here, couldn't barely speak English, came from Colombia. I met her 4 years ago. And to go from that to like seeing her working as a cleaner, then became a manager. And then, she was working with us, then she got a car, then she bought an apartment overseas, then she paid it off, and then she blah, blah, blah. And now she's like running a whole division. She's had a crack at, being GM of the business. Great negotiator, doesn't put up the crap, really amazing at bringing processes and systems into the business. I put her in charge. It doesn't matter where I put them. Like Ariadna, it doesn't matter if I put her in sales or marketing or admin or whatever. She'll excel. She'll just kill it. And you need those people because they'll come up with ideas. Like you said, when you were setting up the Cup Awards, Kirsten was managing it and setting it up and was like pushing for it. This is what these girls are doing. They're just like, I'm just kind of like coming up with the idea of like, I think if we strategize and we can kind of do this in 2 to 3 years time, but this has to happen. They're the ones like making it actually happen. They're getting in the weeds, making sure that,
They make it a reality.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, that's what, because sometimes, as the business owner, you might have the vision, like you might see where you need to go and you might even know how to get there, but you don't know how to actually do it.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like it's weird to say like that, but when you find these team members and you know what else? People love when they can be the person that makes your vision a reality as well, because it gives them a tremendous amount of value within the company. And also because you're entrusting them to do that, it gives them like they know you trust them.
Yeah.
And that's rare as well. So now they're like, wow, I have immense value. I'm trusted. I'm instrumental in making this thing a success. And business, like as it is for the, business is, I always say, a vehicle that gets people from point A to point B. It does that for the owner, but it has to do that also for the team. If it doesn't do that, if it doesn't take them to where they want to go, they'll get off. They'll catch a different bus or a different car. And maybe they might walk. But someone like that will have, what was her name?
Andrea, Ariadna.
Andrea could have come to this country and she's got an instrumental role and she's very important and built a whole career for herself in this company that you created. So to her, it's hopefully she never leaves because she's like, wow, this is part of my identity. I've been part of building this. And not just that, but I was given the opportunity to elevate my life in a way.
Yeah, well, it's gotten to a point where I'm like, look, if you stay where you are, you're gonna like build walls and you're not gonna grow anymore, right? So I was like, instead of focusing on other areas, because we've got enough people now, I want you to drill down and do what you do better. And I was like, why don't we open a business 50-50 JV, and then 10% of your revenue needs to come from somewhere else, then 20%, then 40%. So it's actually by building up my team underneath me, like A players love working with A players. Like I remember when I started, I kind of make excuses for people. I'm like, oh, look, I'm not giving them the right advice. I could help them out more. I need to be better. But then it got to a point where like I'd have Andrea and I'd be like, here's some terrible advice on what to do. And she'd go and do it well and do it amazing and even better than I could imagine. And I just realized like, it's not about, yes, you need to have good guidance and everything, but if you have the right person, man, it doesn't matter. They're just going to drive things forward. So by having a team of them together, like we're really pushing this business, we're pushing new opportunities. And if people want promotions, then all it is the business just keeps outgrowing everyone. So then there's opportunities for growth. Yeah. And it keeps them there. Like you said, they're not going to walk because there's always an opportunity to keep going.
Yeah, that's the thing. If you have a team a team of A players, they want to push for growth, as long as you're growing, they'll stay.
Yeah.
The problem is when you stop growing, because if you can't, you're pulling the business forwards from the front. So you're always moving up and focusing on the next most important thing and the next most important thing, which means they're always moving up, focusing on the next important. But the second you stop doing that, then essentially they all stop moving up as well. And if they're an A player, they might not be yet at their income goals for them and their family yet. And if they see, okay, wait, now I can't get that at this company, I might have to move. So there is that pressure. And I feel it all the time too. And I know a lot of business owners do, where it's you need to keep growing because, to get great people, you need to promise them and sell them on a great vision, and if that vision stops or doesn't get there and they can see, okay, well, wait a second, we're not going to get to that vision. Therefore, I'm not going to get my personal goal. Therefore, maybe I need to leave. So you're almost forced to it could be an argument that to have an A team, you need to be constantly growing.
I agree with that. I haven't hit the wall yet. I'm always looking for new opportunities for expansion and other things we can do. Look, I just find business fun, right? I'm not doing it for the money. I'm not doing I can genuinely say that because during COVID, I was not making money. I was getting offered jobs to go back to engineering because there was no one else and it was high paying money at the time for me. And I was like, you know what? I'm just going to keep doing what I do because I love it. So I literally do business because for me, it's a game. And it's funny, I know Alex Mosey says it as well, but for me, literally, before Alex Mosey, I was saying it. It is a game for me. It's just an opportunity to grow and experiment and try different things and see what works. And I remember reading this study, and it was they had CEOs and engineers and architects and a whole bunch of people competing, building these straw towers. And at the end, they were who built the tallest tower? I don't know if you've read this one. And it was a bunch of kindergartners.
The kindergartens. Yeah, I've read that book. I don't know what book that is.
Yeah, and for me, that's all it is. It's just a group of friends. We're there and, we're just trying to build something together and, no one's in charge. Someone's directing it, let's be honest, but no one's really, their word is more valuable than others, and we take on all feedback and we see what can we do.
But yeah, I love the perspective of business is a game, and it's also fun. That's how that's in a sense how I view it. It's something to do. You need something to do. Imagine you woke up every day and you just weren't stimulated. You'd go mad.
Well, from the property, like I said, I was involved in real estate early on. I'd meet people that were retiring at 40 or they had businesses or whatever it was. And then I just see them spiral out of control. They didn't know what to do with themselves because they were so focused on making money. When they got there, suddenly their purpose was gone. I remember a friend of mine was oh, I'm having this argument with my husband because he doesn't want to build and develop this property and blah, blah, blah. I'm what for? She's for money, security. And I'm you're married into a family where they own entire buildings in Melbourne. Whatever you're contributing to that does nothing. That is that purpose you had when you were coming from a background.
It's going to have to change.
Yeah, it's going to have to change. You need to adapt. And
your purpose is for yourself, or you're working for yourself.
Correct.
Not for the family.
Exactly. Yeah.
Yeah, but it's hard. Changing situations is hard. I even imagine for you, starting growing your business and it getting more and more successful and potentially people around you not being in the same position or business. I'm sure that you would have gone through a few difficult phases where you kind of drifted or, you might have become a bit different or you weren't relating to people.
Definitely the not relating is a thing. Look, there's always something you can relate on, right? End of the day, we're human beings and we're dealing with what we're dealing with. I'd love to hear more about your perspective on that because you've obviously met a lot of people and come from a different background from myself, I believe. But look, in life, I think you got to you get to certain points, like I said, 100 rooms, 400 rooms, 1,000, whatever it is, in different areas, in relationships, it doesn't matter what, you got to break yourself down and then rebuild yourself up again. Because I think the ability to be able to really focus internally, self-actualize, look at who you are and be this serves me or doesn't serve me as a programming. Not many people can do that. And I think something I pride myself on is the ability to reflect and be okay, this thing that I've learned, is it actually my benefit or not? And what would it take for me to remove that and then replace it with something more beneficial to my long term? And that's been something that's helped me a lot. And I did a lot of personal development courses. I shifted groups of friends. It wasn't intentional. It's just you naturally start gravitating.
Yeah.
So look, I've been very fortunate. The people I'm friends with now. Like I remember, like it was a beautiful day. We got access to specific boat. And we got this like luxury boat, and I was like, okay, it's Tuesday. Hey guys, who wants to come on a boat? Let's enjoy it. And I actually had a group of friends that could come. A few of them from Cub, a few of them from outside, and I love that I'm in a space where and all we talked about while we were there was number one, how grateful we are that we could do it. You know, the ability to take time off work when we needed to do it. How we were contributing and where we could grow. They were sharing ideas of like, I was like, I'm having this issue with marketing. There was a couple of marketing friends on there and they're like, you could do this, you could shift it there, you could, you know, try that idea.
But that's the thing with being a business owner. Sometimes socializing with other business owners is quite literally the most important work you can do, because, you know, yes, it may look like you guys were on a boat having fun, and very well you probably were, but you were having discussions about your business. You were receiving support and advice or opinions on certain problems. You were further strengthening the relationships that you have with other business people. And obviously finding new business is always a benefit from thing too. But you know, sometimes I think people think, oh, if I need to work hard, I need to be working hard in my business, doing a specific job, and I need to do that all day and all night or whatever it may be. But you know, I think changing the perception of work, like viewing business as fun and changing what exactly is business. A lot of business is socializing as a business owner. And now that's not the point at the very start, because at the very start, you know, you can't afford staff and many staff and things like that. So, you know, you are brought into your role. But as the company grows, learning, socializing, basically networking, doing things that look like fun and probably are often the most valuable thing, you know, you can do.
Yeah, no, I completely agree with that. Like, okay, number one, I talked about my parents' work ethic. I don't have that work ethic. Like, I work hard.
You're on a boat.
I work hard. Yeah, I know, right? Yeah. I work hard. But something I always ask myself is like, what's the thing that will move me forward? Like, I remember I was in Parramatta. We were going to like some restaurant or something with some friends, and I look over at my mate and he looks exhausted. And I'm like, you all right, man? Like, what's going on? He's like, oh, I just had this tough day at work. You know, it was just great. It was grinding, you know? And I'm like, okay, curious. What did you do today that's going to change that for you in 2 or 3 weeks or 6 months' time? Nothing. I was like, he's going to go there next week, same grind. The week after, same grind. For me, I always look at a situation. I'm like, what will actually shift my position? Like, as much as everyone worked their ass off to get things working 3 months ago, the one thing that really assisted us was me. Sorry, the one thing that assisted us was me calling my competitor and going, hey man, like I really need advice. And that was what really helped us. Not necessarily that the advice that he provided was what we did to get out of it. It helped. I think it was more like it suddenly gave us that like that shining goal or the light of like, you know, we can move past this. There is an opportunity for us to move forward.
Yeah. And it's also, it just builds momentum. Like it may not be the answer, but you took a step forwards towards finding the answer. And then once you take one, you take a second, you take a third. And then by the fifth step, you've kind of found the answer.
Yeah, correct. And it's just iteration. You just got to keep trying stuff until something works.
You mentioned that you were losing a bunch of money. I think it was before COVID, during COVID, something like that. Was that when was that?
Oh, many times.
What's been the toughest environment? Like, because I imagine the rental market can change quite rapidly, and it obviously fluctuates. What has been the toughest market you've operated in?
Look, it's funny. I always ask myself like, oh, am I going to get through this winter or whatever it is? But then every year we kind of make it through. Look.
Winter's not good.
Winter's not good. Mm-hmm. It is and it isn't. It's actually our best time for growth because no one else is trying to grow at the time, because a lot of people just rely on the market doing all the work versus where like, how can we do it counterintuitively so we grow when no one else is growing? Look, the first time COVID hit, obviously you got a lot of people out of whack, but the owners were kind of understanding. They were like helping us out. But then, COVID hit. I was like, this is a black swan event. It won't happen again. But then the government gave away free accommodation. I don't know if you know this, like halfway through COVID, they were giving away accommodation, 20 weeks free rent to anyone who asked for it. So how do you rent a room when you can get it for free? And then from there, the rains came and we ended up with a whole bunch of mold issues and people were complaining about mold. And I don't know if you're aware of this. And the government started giving away government grants to try and remediate it. We had houses locked down again for the second COVID hit that came. And then afterwards, I was like, okay, COVID's over. The rents went up. We went like crazy. And then recently the government cut immigration by 43%. So once again, we had mass exodus. People were leaving the country. Like everything just dipped. I had people calling me, like competitors calling me going, what are you doing, man? Like we're hitting like 15, 20% vacancy rates and like we're losing money. I don't know what to do. People were like shutting down businesses. They were like giving back properties. I just pulled out my, COVID handbook. What did I do? Step one, look at all the crap properties and get rid of them. Step two, call the owners and be like, hey, look, I want to keep your property, but the market's changed. I need to reduce the rent by like 10, 20, 30%, whatever it is, for this period of time, and then we can do that. But then that's always the best time to grow, because when everyone's handing stuff back and the market starts consolidating,
you're going to acquire cheap rents.
You acquire cheap rents. Like I've got buildings locked in. I've got entire buildings locked in at like astronomically cheap rents in Sydney that I've got locked in for 3 to 6 years, whatever it is, right? And that's been the opportunity. Like you always want to be the guy with a pot of gold when no one else has it, right? Because that's when you can really go in and grow. A
big lesson there as well, and it's something I learned at the start of COVID, was the importance of having cash reserves in your business, in the bank. You know, because if you do have cash reserves, well, A, you're not as freaking out when times go wrong, but B, you're able to capitalize on, you're able to benefit and capitalize from the bad times. Like if you got a lot of cash even as a person and there's a GFC and the property market crashes, well, great time to buy some property. You know, if I didn't have cash, I can't do that. This is similar with business.
It's true. Well, I got a mentor, Michael. He's always like, dude, you gotta run your business on the smell of an oily rag. Now, I've never quite figured out what that means, but the meaning, like the actual essence of it, makes sense. Where, you know, people do the opposite. Like I had a mate who was making a killing. He was making a couple of $1 million a year profit on this business. And he just got really lazy, man. Like any problem was a money solved problem. Like you just threw money at it and he solved it until he didn't have any money. I think what I've learned is as soon as you start making profit, strip it out of the business. So like, let's say I make $1. I'll strip that $1 out of the business. And then the next week, I misjudge my cash flow projections or whatever it is, and I'm on negative $4. I don't transfer the money back. I actually am like, okay, what do I have to do to trade my way out of this position? What do I have to do so I can get out of it? And it's so weird. My wife's like, man, you're so bipolar. So on one hand, I'm like, the business is making no money. And on the other hand, I'm like, okay, we just bought 2 properties. Like, because they're not related, right? Like the business has to figure out how to make itself work regardless of how much money's in it. And then on the other hand, then you got your investments working and hustling and doing what it's got to do. And I teach that to my staff, and I feel the guys that, you know, are really savvy. Now they're applying it to their lives, and I just see them like hustling and they're grinding and they're starting to make that, you know, changing their life. They're then teaching that to their family, and now their family, like their cousins or nieces or whatever, their lives are changing. It's amazing.
There's like, I would probably differ on my personal approach, but what's beautiful about business is that there's no one way to success. You know, you could be successful in multitude of ways, like, you know, how you described. The only thing I would differ with is that a business like is a lot of responsibility. Like basically, if your business goes, you're in trouble and your staff are in trouble and everyone's in trouble. And so I always view it more as like, protect the business first at all costs, plus ripping out money. There's a lot of tax implications for that. So if you've got a lot of money coming in, there's a way to give the government all your money. But I do like to prioritize personally the business's survival, like the security of the business.
Look, you take care of the business takes care of you. I think the way I'm looking at it is more of like, you get more creative with how to resolve issues as opposed to just chucking money at it. Like
very true.
Yeah, like even deals, like I'll structure a deal different. I'm like, this is a great opportunity, but I don't have the cash for it. Can I restructure the way I take this deal so that it pays for itself over time? Yeah. Or I'm like, hey, someone's like, hey, like I was like, this amazing HR person came on board. I was like, I have to hire you. I was trying to hire someone for half the price. You randomly came up. I was curious. I met you. I want you, right? But then I was like, look, I can't afford you. So this is what I could do. And I was like for the first 3 months, it's this. For 6 months, it's that. But then I was like, what do you actually want? Why are you looking to change your job? Because superstars don't just quit their jobs, right? They're leaving for a reason. Something's happened. And I think for her, it was like her husband got a job in some rural area. I'm like, you can work remotely. Doesn't matter. Like, so I was able to meet her needs and still bring her on and retain that talent. And that's something I do. Like I have hired people where I just knew, like I could just sense they had all this innate ability and I had no idea what to do with them. I didn't have a job for them. And I was like, I'm just going to hire you. I'm going to figure out how to pay for you. And then they come on board and they create the capital to pay for themselves and create profit.
Yeah. I mean, your method is definitely a great way to force innovative thinking and problem solving and to probably act quicker in the best interest of the business, you know.
And I had to with COVID, right? Like that's literally like had to get through. And I had no money at the time to throw out problems. So, you know, awesome. And all that mentoring and tutoring and coaching I got from people really helped. And it's not always like people giving you great advice. Some people are just yelling at you, but it's like, okay, what are they trying to tell me, or what message are they trying to portray that they can't articulate that could benefit me in the future? And I think the ability to take on informational guidance or advice, regardless of how it's being presented, whether it's a negative review or whatever it is, I think that's something that can really help you grow in any market.
You're a champion, Navid. We do have to wrap up, though. It's been great getting to know you and meet you. But to our listeners, if you want to catch up with Navid, or sorry, I should say get in contact with Navid to check out his company, you can go to cub.club/podcast and you find information there, along with his favorite book recommendations, Greatest Lessons in Business, and other cool things. You can catch up with Cub on social media, on Instagram at Club of United Business. Thank you again, brother. That was awesome.
No worries. Pleasure. Thanks.
Hope you enjoyed the show.